Hello viewers and welcome to Spotlight. And on this Spotlight edition, we will be having what we can describe as the Corona commentary, because there are so many issues going on that are worth a deep reflection. And we'll start with the matter of national discipline. And let me give you what I call the parable of the glass. Now, there was this mother who loved the pub, and again she would take her son along to her local pub. She loved a happy life, and drinking was for her the ignition key to happiness. For her, it was what has been said, party after party, coming home in the morning because she was the life of the party and had to stay through to the very end. And even when she would not take so long and she would not take her son along, she would return home early, say midnight. She staggered with a bottle of liquor in her hands, and the son would open the door for her. And with a staggering tongue, she would praise her son for being so obedient. She would ask the son to bring her a glass. When the son brought the glass, she would say, "You are a wonderful son." She would go ahead and pour the drink into the glass and finish off her drinking at home. Now, one day she came home from the parking lot. She would hear noises, and she concluded it must be one of her neighbors having a party. She was home anyway, and it would be okay to spend a few more hours of the night at a party in a neighbor's house. It was close by anyway. So she followed the noise to the first, second, and third floors. By now, she was certain that the party was on the fifth floor. So she pressed the elevator to go to the fifth floor. But when she got to the fifth floor, it was surprisingly quiet. The noise was actually coming from her floor, the fourth floor. And she never knew her opposite door neighbor as a party person, so she was surprised. So as she pressed the elevator back to fourth floor, she was excited because her boring next door neighbor was finally initiated into life. But when she staggered out of the lift to the fourth floor, the party noise was actually coming from her house. Alcohol left her head for a moment, and she wondered which of her friends could have invaded her house without her permission. She pressed the doorbell angrily, and a strange young girl, a glass of whiskey in her hand, opened the door. She said with a staggering tone, "Welcome home, ma'am." And the lady asked, "Who are you?" punctuating her question with unprintables. The young, heavily drunk young woman responded, and the way she responded, it was clear she understood the alphabet of the unprintables very well. So she opened her response with a series of unprintable phrases and finally got to saying, "I am Derek's friend." The mother smashed the bottle of whiskey she had in her hand on the floor. Now the young people in the party cheered as the bottle hit the floor. Now the mother, the woman, pushed her way to her son and asked him, "Derek, what is this? You are an obedient son. What is all this?" The son replied, "Mom, every time I bring you a glass to drink your whiskey, you commend me for being obedient. So, as a good son, I thought of a way to make you happy. I thought that if instead of just giving you a glass, what if I gave you bottles? And instead of just giving you bottles, let me have people for you to drink with. I'm just being what you call me, an obedient son." We can see this parable as a case of planting sour seeds and expecting a sweet harvest. We can also see it as a case of demanding where you have not sown. Now, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, our government has made repeated appeals, repeated calls on discipline and more discipline. Every press conference, every politician stands up and says, discipline, discipline, discipline. People, discipline. Now, discipline is so important that without it, this disease would be absolutely impossible to control. But as things have been, this discipline is actually elusive. And the government has to come in and force the discipline. Its preaching of the gospel of discipline is not being easily believed. It doesn't have too many converts as the government would want. But before we accuse Kenyans of discipline, or rather, before we accuse them of indiscipline, let's cast our eyes to pre-corona times and ask ourselves, in the spirit of demanding where you have sown, how much of that discipline has the government banked in its people? Now, it is interesting to observe that in countries where public discipline in the form of, say, public decency, less corruption, moral accountability, where this discipline is upheld on a day-to-day basis, citizens have responded better to instructions from their governments. The benefit has been that these countries are showing better containment of the disease. The results are way better. There is greater cooperation from the citizens. They are reaping where they have already sown. The indiscipline observed in Kenyans should speak to the leaders who are super creatives in rebellion and chaos. You cannot impart on the people an alphabet of indiscipline and then demand from them a composition on discipline. If you have been coaching the people on greed, immorality, lack of accountability, rebellion, and disorder, when you suddenly now demand from them order, love, concern, community, cooperation, there will be a noise in their heads and a breakdown in communication. When the government demands discipline from its citizens, such a demand must be educated by the fact that there can be no national discipline without personal discipline first. And there can be no personal discipline without a continuous public display of the same by the leaders. Now, going forward, our leaders must intentionally invest in disciplined politics. This way, the people will have clear images of what the politicians mean when they tell the public, personal discipline is your salvation. Now, that's about the government. Now, let's come to the person, the individual person. And there are many ways in which we can describe this corona season. And one of the fitting ways to describe it, it is the narrow gate season. One of the aspects that makes God unpopular in his demands is that he requires that people abandon the wide road and follow what is popularly called or described as the straight and narrow path. People love the wide road where they are free, where they can be their liberal selves. But just when you have mastered your laugh at the people who choose the narrow way, just when you are bold enough to call the people on the narrow way, so to speak, fools, just when you have declared the wide road the highway to life, nature imposes a season with the rule, take the narrow gate and live, or keep the broad road and die. Now, one of the casualties of the broad road is the home. The activities of life have driven people away from their homes. But the chorus across the world in the present time, in this COVID-19 pandemic season, is stay at home. Now, all the outlets that sustain the liberal life are not only closed, they are declared illegal. If you are found in them, you go to jail. Now, all the time you had to feed your liberal ways is now cut off. Even a curfew is in place to make sure you stay at home. In the literal sense of the phrase, staying at home. Wisdom dictates that with the indefinite state of the stay-at-home order, we must graduate from just staying at home to really being at home. Those who have always invested in their family bonds are likely to enjoy this forced home stay. But those who abandoned their home and ranked it lower in their priorities are now forced to face the gaps and fix them as well. When you look at it, the family should be a big winner in this corona season. And by extension, a nation where the family is honored has happier people. And happier people are more likely to be more productive. And more productivity means more prosperity. The prosperity of the family is one that yields the prosperity in the nation. Now, with these laws in place, people speed to their homes to arrive before the curfew hour. Now, on regular seasons, people would speed from town to town for leisure. And for many, especially young people, they would move from town to town to feed their lusts. As it is now, before your car gets to gear 4, you are already at a no-through road sign. And just before you think it's a prank, disciplined forces with mean faces and slinging guns are manning the roadblock. The straight and narrow, which many mocked, is now law. You now need to seek out the people you mocked as boring. It's time to consult those domesticated fellows on how to stay at home 101. Think about it. You may be one who prides in riding down the wide road. But when it really, really matters, it is the straight and narrow, the narrow gate that delivers true life, even in non-pandemic times. When the sanitizer and the soap are no longer low, when the forced stay-at-home orders are lifted and the masks have fallen, when the roadblocks are dismantled and the pleasure shops are open, an important question: what will be different about your life? What will be different about your life? You will have wasted this whole experience if you run back to your old wide road habits. Now, C.S. Motahi Kagwe has generated a now world recited proverb: if we continue to behave normally, this disease will treat us abnormally. Now, fast forward to the post-corona season. When the disease is behind us, this proverb will still be valid. It will just need a little adjustment. It will then say, if you continue to behave normally, life will treat you abnormally. To put this into perspective, I'll quote a Kenyan journalist, Njoki Mburu, who sadly predicted, and I quote her, "There are people who will escape death from corona because discipline is forced, but they will die the same day the corona laws are lifted in their rush to restore their old ways." End of quote. Very sobering indeed. Make this season count. Friend, make this season count. Make it count for life. And this commentary today cannot be complete if we don't talk about the church. And not just about the church, but the church and science. It's all over the news that science is working hard. The question is, the church is working what? Science we know is working hard, but the church is working what? Now, I read somewhere a doctor complaining that pastors usually demonize doctors. They do so especially with a characteristic phrase in their prayers and in their preaching, where the pastors say, it does not matter what the doctor says. And sometimes there are doctors in the congregation. Now, really? When the pastors, the same pastors, are speaking to their children about ambition, they pray that their children would be doctors and their children would be scientists. Doctors, according to the attitude of some pastors, play God. But right now, the world over is celebrating doctors and healthcare workers. It is time for pastors to become doctor sensitive, to become doctor appreciative. It is time that pastors understood doctors as agents of healing through knowledge. Fact is that God does many miracles through science. Let me ask, if the church was given the lead in this COVID crisis, imagine pastors were given the platform to steer the world, the whole world, out of the coronavirus situation. What would they do? Now, in this crisis, the response by science is posing a great challenge to the church. Why? Because scientists are working day and night, working for a cure. Pastors, on the other hand, are waiting for a vaccine to be found and then proclaim that God has given it. Where is the hard work of the church? I ask again, in this COVID-19, this coronavirus crisis season, where is the hard work of the church? What will today's church tell future generations it did during the corona pandemic? At the very least, the church should be able to pick up the aspect of this disease that taking care of the neighbor is a key component of healing and arresting this pandemic. Taking care of the neighbor. Now, this neighbor consciousness is the heart of the gospel. From here, the church can begin its innovation. Instead of spending its time lobbying for reopening of the church, it would spend more time mobilizing Christians into what we can describe as love laboratories, conducting love tests and innovate love formulas for the community to work hand in hand with the scientific formulae. This way, the church will be at the heart of the healing agents at this particular time. If the church preaches on loving the neighbor, this is a season to lead the world in this loving. To stand aside and spectate is a failure to report to duty. And the church will owe history an explanation. Food for thought. This has been Spotlight. Thank you.